Welcome to another TheoBrawlz deep dive on exposing Calvinism. So today's material is a recorded Clubhouse room where amateur theologians lock horns over predestination, free will, and the meaning of faith. And honestly, nothing quite screams productive Tuesday afternoon like a group of men on the internet screaming about first-century Greek definitions while actively refusing to listen to each other.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's really something else. It's like watching gladiators swing these huge, heavy theological swords in the dark.
Right.
They're just completely missing the foundational logic of their opponents. The sheer amount of rhetorical friendly fire is just staggering.
It really is. Now, just to be crystal clear with you up front, our mission for this deep dive is not to take sides on Calvinism versus Arminianism.
Absolutely not. We are not solving the mysteries of the cosmos today.
No, we are acting as ringside referees for the logic of the debate. We're going to analyze the claims, the rhetorical dodges, the Greek word games, and honestly, how humans behave when their core beliefs are cornered.
Right, because the psychological aspect is what elevates this from just, a mundane theological spat.
Exactly.
When people feel their core theology is threatened, the actual doctrine takes a back seat. You get to watch these intense ego defense mechanisms in real time.
So the deep dive kicks off with a debate between Greg, who's defending the Calvinist side, and a guy named Lamont. And Greg sets this track right out of the gate.
It is a brilliantly laid trap, too.
He just asks, if Calvinism were true, why would it be a bad thing?
Yeah, which is smart because it forces Lamont to articulate his actual grievance instead of just throwing, 50 out-of-context Bible verses at the wall.
Right, exactly. And Lamont takes the bait instantly. He argues that Calvinism leads to, quote, hopelessness.
Hopelessness.
Because in his view, if God predetermines everything, there's nothing a person can do to change their outcome. The game is rigged.
And that is a super common, highly intuitive objection. But Greg does this classical philosophical pivot here that is just masterful.
Oh, totally. He just grants Lamont's view.
Yes. He completely abandons the defense of predestination. He says, okay, let's take predestination off the table. Let's say God doesn't predetermine. He merely has infallible foreknowledge.
Right, just knowing what will happen. And this is where Greg springs the trap, because if God has infallible foreknowledge, he already knows exactly who will go to hell before he even creates them.
Exactly. Before he even hits the create button, God knows.
Mm-hmm.
And because that knowledge is infallible, it cannot be wrong.
It's fixed.
Right? Their fate is fixed before they draw their first breath. So Greg is showing that infallible knowledge results in the exact same hopelessness that Lamont is complaining about.
Right. And Lamont is suddenly stuck in a corner of his own making because his own theology, when you push it, yields the exact same hopeless result.
So what does Lamont do? He attempts this massive dodge.
He totally does. He argues that, well, knowing isn't choosing.
Which is such a red herring.
A huge red herring.
Yeah.
Because Greg isn't arguing that knowing is choosing. He's arguing that the outcome is the exact same.
Right. Greg's point is that infallible knowledge results in that exact same hopelessness. Lamont is just desperately trying to change the subject from the outcome to the mechanism.
Yeah, he keeps protesting but God didn't force them.
And Greg is just it doesn't matter if you force them. If he knows it infallibly before creating them, the fate is sealed.
So then Lamont, because he's backed into this logical corner, he pulls out the ultimate theological escape hatch.
Oh yeah, the big one.
He says, well, God is outside of time and space.
Right.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate for Lamont here for a second. If God is entirely outside of time, how does that change the fact that the outcome for the human inside of time is still fixed?
It doesn't. That's the thing. It's a classic evasion tactic.
Because our Friday is coming whether God is looking at it from eternity or not.
Exactly. The theologians going back to Boethius in the 6th century have used that timelessness argument. But in the context of Greg's specific challenge about hopelessness prior to creation, it completely fails.
It's just a smoke bomb.
Yes. Even if God observes the entire timeline at once, the moment he decides to actualize this specific universe, the timeline becomes fixed for the humans trapped inside of time.
So Lamont is just using this big, abstract theological concept to try and magically dissolve a logical contradiction.
Without actually answering the question.
Yep.
Because acknowledging the logic would mean Lamont has to admit his primary objection also applies to his own worldview.
And human ego just rarely allows for that kind of concession on a live audio stage, does it?
Never. They just retreat to semantic warfare.
Which brings us perfectly to the next phase of the discussion. So the baton passes to another Calvinist, Chris Raw,
Right.
and Chris decides to press Lamont on the actual mechanics of salvation. So Lamont claims salvation is a free gift from God, but it's ultimately activated by human choice.
And Chris methodically walks him right into a logical contradiction, an A versus not A situation.
Break that down for us.
So if salvation is predicated entirely on human choice, then salvation is initiated and accomplished by the creature, not the creator. God's action is just potential until the human actualizes it.
But Lamont insists it's a gift, a 100% free gift.
Right, but Chris points out the contradiction. A gift that is earned or activated by a required action like a human choice ceases to be entirely free.
It makes the choice a work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You cannot logically say, A, salvation is a totally free gift, and not A. It absolutely requires the work of human choice to become effective.
So they're basically operating on completely conflicting definitions of the word grace and gift.
Entirely. Chris actually tries to briefly introduce the theological concept of compatibilism to bridge this.
Right, that's primary versus secondary causation, right.
Yeah, the idea that God is the primary cause, but humans act freely as secondary causes according to their natures. But Lamont just operates on this strict transactional definition.
He rejects any nuance at all. To Lamont, a choice is only free if it's 100% autonomous.
And this where the persuasion in the room completely breaks down.
It totally derails. This is the moment Lamont literally accuses Chris of serving him word salad.
Oh, the word salad defense.
I mean, calling an opponent's argument word salad just because you don't like the implications of their logic, that is the internet debate equivalent of flipping the chessboard.
It really is. But it shows how much this bluster weakens Lamont's position. He just looks defensive, not persuasive.
He's backed into a corner.
Right. Neurologically, when your core beliefs are cornered by inescapable logic, your brain processes that cognitive dissonance like a physical threat.
Wow, really?
Yeah. The amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, the logic centers literally shut down, and the verbal bluster kicks in to protect the ego. Lamont calls it word salad because his brain literally refuses to process the fatal implications of Chris's argument.
That is wild. He's just defending his neurological territory. But right as this is devolving, a new challenger enters the ring. A guy named Justin.
Oh, Justin.
Yeah, Justin is a self-admitted novice, and he boldly interrupts to claim that faith and belief mean two completely different things in the Bible.
He comes in so confident, too. But Chris and another guy named Ty, they instantly correct him.
Right, because in the original Greek text, they are the exact same root word.
Exactly. Pistis is the noun, and pistuo is the verb. Justin commits what we call the exact word fallacy.
Explain that for us.
It happens when someone conflates a theological concept with a specific English translation. They ignore that two different English words can translate to the exact same ancient Greek word.
It's like saying, I have a vehicle, but I don't have a car. You are splitting hairs in English that literally don't exist in the garage.
That's a perfect analogy. You can't build a massive doctrine on the stylistic choices of 17th century English translators.
Right. But Chris doesn't just stop at the Greek. He actually breaks down the theological concepts for the beginners in the room using Latin terms.
Yeah, he brings up assensus versus fiducia.
Right. So assensus is just mental agreement, right? Like acknowledging facts.
Exactly. Like the demons in James. The demons believe God exists. They have a senses, but they aren't saved.
Because they lack fiducia.
Right, which is active, saving trust. So Chris proves there's a difference between demonic belief and saving faith. But it has nothing to do with the English words faith versus belief.
And Lamont's reaction here is just hilarious. He jumps back in to help Justin and inadvertently ties himself into the most ridiculous knot.
It's painful to listen to. He vehemently denies that there are multiple types of faith. He's like, there is only one faith.
But then in the exact same breath, he starts describing different types of faith.
Yes. He mentions Thomas seeing versus believing without seeing, and demons believing versus Christians trusting.
All while insisting there aren't different types of faith. The absurdity of this exchange is just its peak internet debate.
It's cognitive dissonance playing out live on a hot mic. He is so focused on just opposing whatever Chris says that he contradicts himself in a single sentence.
Just a complete exegesis standoff. Which leads us to the next big clash. The conversation turns to Philippians chapter 1, verse 29.
Right, where it says it has been granted or given to believers to believe in Christ.
So Chris uses this to argue that faith is a gift from God. It's not a human work. And he challenges Lamont to provide a counter-exegesis.
And we should define exegesis real quick. It means drawing the meaning out of the text based on grammar and historical context.
As opposed to eisegesis.
Right, which is reading your own ideas into the text.
So Chris wants Lamont to go word by word, but Lamont flat out refuses.
He completely dodges. He claims Paul is just recounting his own experiences. He refuses to deal with the grammar of the word granted.
This is where the civility just totally breaks down. Chris calls Lamont a coward for running from the text.
And Lamont gets highly offended.
He's like, "You wouldn't say that to my face," which is incredible irony because Lamont literally called Chris a coward just minutes prior.
It's the psychology of evasion. Selective outrage is a potent tool. When you're losing on the logic, you pivot to tone policing.
Right, you make it about how offended you are, so you never have to actually answer the textual challenge.
Exactly.
And that leads to what I call the kick me antics. It's the strangest behavior. Lamont starts daring the moderators to kick him out instead of just using the leave button.
Oh, this is a classic face-saving mechanism in online debates.
Why do they do that?
Well, if you hit leave yourself, it looks like a retreat. You admit defeat. But if you act belligerent until you are physically ejected from the digital room, you get to play the martyr.
Oh, wow. They couldn't handle my truth, so they silenced me.
Precisely. It lets you lose without ever feeling like a loser.
That is fascinating. So eventually Justin returns to the stage. He is determined to prove libertarian free will.
And Chris is ready for him. He forces Justin to look up the actual philosophical definition in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy to stop the semantic moving targets.
Which is what? The ability to do otherwise.
Right. Given the exact same past, desires, and laws of nature, you could have chosen differently.
So Justin accepts this definition, and then he quotes Matthew 18 to prove it. He says, Jesus told the disciples, "Unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven."
And Justin argues that because Jesus presents a choice, unless you do this, it proves free will.
Which is a massive logical non sequitur.
It's a huge logical flaw. A conditional statement, unless X happens, Y won't happen, does not imply that the subject has the inherent capability to fulfill condition X.
Right. I love the analogy Greg brings up from the transcript here. He says, "Unless you give me $1 million, I will burn your house down."
Exactly. Just because the condition is stated doesn't mean you miraculously possess $1 million in your bank account.
The command doesn't grant the ability.
No, it doesn't. Justin is smuggling in Kant's maxim of ought implies can. But historically, Reformed theology explicitly rejects that a divine command implies inherent human ability.
So his logic fails. But then Chris points out Justin's catastrophic mishandling of the scripture's historical context.
Yeah, Justin assumes children represent innocence or humility. He's reading this with a very modern 21st century Western sentimentalism.
But in the ancient world, it was completely different, right?
Entirely. Children were often viewed as worthless non-entities. They occupied the lowest rung of the social ladder. They brought zero economic value or status to the table.
So Jesus wasn't saying be innocent. He was telling these status-obsessed disciples they needed to view themselves as having zero inherent worth to enter the kingdom.
Exactly, which actually hurts Justin's argument. Because Justin is trying to say humans bring their valuable free will to the table. Jesus is saying you bring nothing.
And Justin's reaction is just peak confident ignorance. He admits he's not well-versed, but instantly accuses established historical interpretations of being eisegesis.
Just because they don't fit his modern assumptions. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect on full display.
So as we synthesize this whole deep dive, the overarching theme is really clear. In theological debates, the actual doctrine often takes a backseat to ego, shifting definitions, and a blatant refusal to engage with the opponent's actual premise.
You see Lamont complaining about word salad while serving up a buffet of contradictions. You see Justin accusing experts of eisegesis while literally reading modern sentimentalism into an ancient text.
But the funniest part, after Justin leaves, the Calvinists start mocking his theology by coming up with the Free Willy Bible.
Oh, the satirical rewrites.
Yes, they rewrite verses to match Justin's theology, like Abram asked God into his heart and it was credited to him as righteousness, or the heart is trustworthy above all else.
It's incredibly snarky, but it's actually a fascinating rhetorical tool. It's an exercise in reductio ad absurdum.
Forcing the opponent to hear the logical conclusion of their own theology played back to them.
Right. It forces you to hear the jarring dissonance when you inject those philosophical assumptions directly into the text.
Well, it certainly highlights how messy these debates get. So I want you to think about your own most fiercely held beliefs. When you are challenged, do you look for the Stanford Encyclopedia definition to make sure you are communicating clearly? Or do you just accuse the other person of serving you word salad and wait to be kicked out of the room? The next time you find yourself in an argument, ask yourself, am I actually listening? Or am I just demanding that the universe rewrite its rules to validate my own free will? Thanks for diving deep with us.